You awaken inside a tiny windowless room filled with the stifling scent of sweat, fear, and olive oil. The cold stone walls press against your bare skin, and from the distant main house, laughter drifts to your ears. It is the kind of laughter that twists your stomach into knots of anxiety. Your body aches fiercely from the previous night, bruises spreading purple and yellow across your ribs like a twisted bouquet. The iron shackle around your ankle has chafed your skin raw, and dried blood flakes away with every slight movement. Heavy footsteps approach, sandals striking the marble floor with a steady rhythm. You recognize this sound immediately. It is the overseer coming to get you ready for another day of what they call service. Your hands tremble as you reach for the thin tunic scrunched in the corner. You are 15 years old, though you stopped counting birthdays long ago since they took you from your home. Time has a strange flow when you belong to someone else. The metal door scrapes open against the stone, sunlight pouring sharply inside. You squint, lifting a shaky hand to shield your eyes. The overseer's towering figure fills the doorway, a mountain of muscle and scars, his face a cruel map, etched by years of breaking young souls. "Clean yourself," he growls, throwing a damp cloth near your feet. The master has guests arriving tonight, important guests. His eyes scan your body with the cold precision of a trader inspecting stock. You will be part of their entertainment. Your throat tightens. You have known what that means since the very first night they dragged you screaming from your village, after being informed that your family's debts were settled with the only currency they had left. This became your harsh reality. For numerous young men in ancient Greece, not the polished version taught in schools, where philosophy and democracy shine so brightly that we overlook the darkness behind the marble columns and intellectual debates. Beyond the symposiums and political discussions lay a system that exploited the vulnerable and discarded their humanity like shattered pottery. Before we delve into these overlooked stories of endurance and pain, if you appreciate uncovering hidden historical truths, consider pressing that like button and subscribing for more videos like this. Also, please share in the comments where you are watching from. It amazes me that we explore these ancient tales together, connecting across time and distance through our mutual fascination with history. The selection process began long before you fully grasped what was occurring. Perhaps your family had debts to a wealthy landowner. Maybe raiders ravaged your village amidst the endless wars that plagued the Greek world. Or possibly, you were born exceptionally beautiful in a society that treated beauty as a resource to be exploited and sold. In the rural settlements scattered throughout the Greek countryside, families existed on a precarious edge. A failed harvest, a father's injury, or a death in the household could tip the balance into utter despair. Any of these situations could thrust a family into debt, and when the debt collectors showed up, they had no interest in empty assurances or future income. They demanded payment in kind. Imagine a small farming village situated in a valley surrounded by olive groves. The homes are rudimentary, made of mud bricks and thatched roofs, with earthen floors, and just one room where whole families share space to stay warm. Naked children scamper between these houses, their giggles blending with the bleating of goats and the far-off sound of women grinding grain. Life here is tough, yet it is life. Then the drought arrives. Day after day, the relentless sun scorches dying crops. The ancient, twisted olive trees yield only shriveled fruit. The barley fields turn dry and brittle. The wells, which have sustained this village through many generations, begin to dry up. Families face unbearable decisions no parent should ever have to make. First, they must sell their livestock, the goats and sheep that are their sole form of wealth. Next goes the jewelry, the few precious heirlooms handed down through the years. When even this is gone, their gaze turns towards their children with a new, troubling perspective. Slave traders descend like vultures, sensing weakness. They set up shop in the village square, chains and ropes coiled like metallic serpents, their ledgers filled with names and prices. They promise immediate payment for long-term service agreements, 20 years of labor, in exchange for enough silver to feed a family. Winter makes sense and even seems kind when your children are truly starving, but you are only 12 years old. You cannot grasp the cruel math behind desperation. You know only that your father avoids meeting your gaze as he bargains over your price. Your mother turns away when the trader inspects your teeth as if you were an animal. You feel the rough hands assessing your muscles, judging your worth. Words like promising, good breeding, and suitable for household service fill the air, but their meaning escapes you, not yet understood. The merchant counts silver coins into your father's palm, each coin sparkling under the sun, each representing a full year of your existence. Your father's hands tremble as he accepts the payment, but accepts it he does. Your mother hides her face and weeps, yet does not halt the sale. They assure you this is temporary, that you will earn money and return home richer, maybe able to buy land or marry. They promise kind treatment, valuable skills, chances for progress. Their lies drip from their mouths like honey from a shattered hive, sweet but deadly. The journey to the city turns into a nightmare of chained necks and raw feet. You have become part of a human caravan, dozens of boys and young men bound by iron and hopelessness. The older ones remain silent, for they have learned that hope is simply another empty word. To avoid future sorrow, the younger children wail for their mothers until their voices disappear, or until the overseers silence them with harsh blows to their throats. You journey through landscapes that would be breathtaking under other conditions. Gentle hills adorned with olive trees, coastal roads where the sea glimmers like countless diamonds, mountain routes frequented by soaring eagles, yet you see nothing of it. Your world has shrunk to the length of the chain between you and the boy ahead. You march to the rhythm of footsteps on stone, burdened by the growing realization that you may never return home. At night, they bind you to posts hammered into the earth. You lie on your side in the dirt, listening to the muffled cries of the other boys, while feeling the cold iron around your neck, heavy like a destiny you cannot escape. Occasionally, the traders bring visitors to examine their human goods, men with gentle hands and calculative gazes who move among you like farmers inspecting their livestock. They prod and poke, checking for illness or injury, assessing your suitability for different kinds of servitude. You learn to distinguish the various buyers: agricultural slaveholders who seek strength and stamina for long hours in the fields from sunrise to sunset, household masters who desire obedience, intelligence, and a certain delicate nature indicating you will bring no trouble. But there is a third type, whose visits you fear above all. These men wear fine clothes and speak with refined accents. Their accents carry the scent of costly perfumes and fine wine, while their fingers glisten with rings as they inspect you closely. Their touch lingers in a way that sends chills down your spine. They are searching for something very particular, a unique mix of youthfulness and beauty that relates not to labor but entirely to indulgence. The slave market in Athens overwhelms every one of your senses. The first sensation is the noise, hundreds of voices bargaining, crying out, begging, and giving commands. Then the smells hit you: unwashed bodies, fear, sweat, urine, and an unexplainable odor that churns your stomach. When you look around, you finally grasp the warnings from older slaves to keep your gaze low. Naked bodies are lined up like goods. Children barely able to walk stand beside their mothers with eyes full of bewilderment. Old men appear broken with bowed backs, their worth judged by the strength left in their aging limbs. Buyers circle like predators, pointing and debating prices, as though the people displayed cannot hear a single word. You are cleaned and oiled before being sold, not out of kindness, but because clean goods command higher prices. The oil causes your skin to shine in the sunlight, emphasizing the lean muscles you gained during the journey. Someone has decided you are too attractive for hard field labor, so you are placed among the household slaves meant for indoor service. The auctioneer's booming voice echoes across the marketplace. At the market, the auctioneer outlines your characteristics, including your age, place of origin, and physical condition. He notes your attractive appearance and calm demeanor, phrases designed to catch the attention of certain buyers. The opening bid is low, but rises swiftly as more men join the contest. You remain motionless on the platform, wishing to vanish into yourself, while unfamiliar hands inspect your body. One person pries open your mouth to examine your teeth, another tests your hand's strength, and a third fingers your hair, commenting on its feel and shade. You cease to be a human being and become an object appraised for sale. The successful buyer is a man named Lysander, though his name will only reach your knowledge later. All you perceive at the moment is his contented grin as he counts out the silver coins. His gaze already seems to claim you before the deal concludes. He is middle-aged and well-nourished, with the soft hands of someone unaccustomed to hard labor. His tunic is made of fine silk, dyed in rich purple, a clear symbol of wealth and prestige. However, when his eyes meet yours, something in his look stirs a deep desire in you to flee, despite the chains that make flight impossible. Lysander presides over a large household in Athens's affluent district. His residence dwarfs your entire village. Majestic marble columns, painted walls, and intricate mosaics portraying gods and heroes decorate the home, while servants bustle along corridors carrying trays laden with food. You watch their quick and anxious movements and notice that many are young men, each strikingly attractive in their own unique way. They all share the same expression of hopeless resignation, a look you start to identify as the mark of captivity. The overseer who takes you from Lysander is called Demetrius, a former slave himself. Bought at a young age, he climbed the ranks through a mix of intelligence and cruelty. Now he controls the household slaves with an unyielding grip, knowing better than anyone how to crush their spirits and force obedience. As he leads you around the house, he lays out the rules plainly. You will be fed twice a day, barley porridge in the morning, and bread with olives in the evening. Clean clothes will be given once a week. Bathing, eating, and sleeping will happen only when ordered. You will speak only when addressed, and never meet a free person's gaze directly. Refusing any order, no matter how harsh or degrading, is not an option. Then he delivers the chilling part that makes your blood run cold. You are here to serve the master and his guests in any way they demand. This might mean pouring wine, serving meals, cleaning rooms, or offering entertainment. Demetrius shares a cruel smile as he adds that the true nature of this entertainment will reveal itself in time. He warns that some slaves resist at first, but such defiance results only in suffering. Compliance, however, can sometimes bring relief or small favors. Certain advantages include better meals, a warmer place to rest, and possibly even some small personal belongings. Your new living quarters are located in the basement of the building, a row of small rooms where the male slaves spend their nights. Each room contains a straw mattress, a thin coverlet, and a chamber pot. The walls consist of thick stone intended to dampen noise, and you quickly realize the importance of this design. The other slaves greet you with a mix of compassion and caution. There is Marcus, a boy about your age who has endured this place for 2 years. His eyes reveal a depth of sorrow that seems unimaginable for someone so young. Then there is Alexios, older and marked with scars, who shares in quiet tones stories about the distinguished visitors and what they expect from the entertainment provided. Lastly, you meet Philemon, barely 14 but already carrying the haunted look of someone much older. He once belonged to a merchant family until his father's business collapsed, and the creditors took everything, leaving him here for 6 months. He is the one who tells you the harsh truth about what truly occurs during the symposiums. In ancient Greek culture, the symposium was a social gathering centered around drinking, where educated men assembled to debate philosophy, politics, and art. These events are remembered as refined occasions full of intellectually rich conversations among the greatest thinkers of antiquity. However, the reality often differed greatly, especially once the wine began to flow liberally and the guests' demands increased. In more private gatherings, slaves were expected not only to serve food and drink, but also to offer themselves. Philosophers who debated the meaning of virtue and justice during the day had no hesitation in indulging in the company of young slaves for their own pleasure at night. The very men who composed elegant poetry about love and honor treated their human possessions like playthings, to be used and discarded at will. Philemon recounts the preparation rituals with a detached tone, as if describing someone else's experience. The slaves were bathed and oiled, their skin made smooth and shiny. They were dressed in special tunics, thin fabrics that clung to their bodies, meant more to attract than to cover. Occasionally, they wore jewelry such as golden bracelets or necklaces, which marked them as ornamental rather than practical. The symposium began in a formal manner. Guests reclined on couches placed around the room, engaging in conversations about current topics, while slaves poured wine and presented elaborate dishes. The discussion could revolve around the nature of democracy, Socratic philosophy, or recent military campaigns. These men were educated and cultured, proud of their intellectual refinement. However, as the night wore on and the wine affected everyone, the atmosphere changed. Deep philosophical talks gave way to cruder amusements. Stories turned into bawdy jokes. Serious debates dissolved into boastful displays. And the slaves who had quietly served at the fringes suddenly became part of the entertainment in unexpected ways. They find themselves at the center of attention, beginning with small favors. Pour wine for this guest. Massage the shoulders of that one. Feed grapes to the man sitting in the corner. Each request appears harmless enough. Yet you start recognizing the signs, the way conversations quiet when you approach, the lingering touches unrelated to serving wine, how certain guests observe your every move with a predatory gaze. The first time you are chosen for special attention, you are too innocent to grasp what is happening. An older man, old enough to be your grandfather, invites you to join him on his couch. He wants you to share his wine. At first, his questions seem kind-hearted. Where are you from? Do you miss your home? Are you being treated kindly? His hand rests gently on your shoulder as he speaks, then slowly travels down your back and lower. You try to pull away, but his grip tightens. Other guests watch, their conversations fading as they focus on the unfolding scene. What follows is etched in your mind with a terrible clarity born of trauma. The way your pleas are dismissed, how your resistance is met with cruel laughter from the onlookers, the feeling of powerlessness while hands hold you down, your clothing torn off, and your innocence shattered in the most horrific manner imaginable. Later, alone in your cell, you stare at the cold stone ceiling, struggling to comprehend how it all happened. The world can hold unimaginable cruelty. Your body may ache, but the emotional scars run far deeper. You cease to be seen as a person, becoming instead an object to be exploited and discarded, a source of amusement for men who compose verses praising the beauty of the human soul. Yet this is only the beginning. In the months that follow, you realize that what occurred on that first night is viewed as mild by the estate's standards. Certain guests have peculiar tastes and delight in inflicting specific torments. Others vie to discover who can most thoroughly shatter a slave's spirit. The overseer encourages such conduct, knowing that slaves who are broken are far easier to control. You come to understand that this household functions under a complicated system of abuse. The newest slaves endure the harshest treatment, serving as fresh prey for the guests' desires. Those who manage to survive long enough may be elevated to different positions, such as personal attendants to less cruel masters, or kitchen staff who rarely face the guests directly. But advancement demands more than mere survival. It requires a total abandonment of self-respect and a readiness to assist in one's own degradation. Some slaves try to resist. Marcus attempted to flee during his first month, only to be caught and beaten so badly he limped for weeks. Alexios once defied an especially humiliating command and suffered 3 days chained outdoors without food or water, left exposed to the elements as a warning to others. But the forms of resistance you encounter are diverse. Some enslaved individuals withdraw so profoundly into themselves that they resemble living corpses, present physically but absent mentally. Others develop a kind of desperate cleverness, learning to read their captors' moods and avoid the harshest punishments through keen observation and compliance. A few, the fortunate ones, simply succumb to death, whether from illness, injury, or overwhelming despair, finding liberation in the end. You might witness slaves who cease eating, ignore commands, and stop caring about their survival. Usually, overseers replace them quickly because there is always a fresh supply of young bodies available at the slave markets. The psychological methods used to break enslaved people are as complex as they are brutal. Isolation remains one of the most potent weapons, being severed from anyone familiar, surrounded only by others who share the same helplessness. Fellow slaves might offer some empathy, but they cannot provide real protection or hope. Unpredictability is another harsh strategy. One never knows when they will be called, what will be demanded, or how severe even a minor mistake's punishment might be. This relentless unpredictability fosters a constant state of fear, eroding resistance more efficiently than any physical torture. Yet perhaps the most insidious method is the erasure of identity, stripping away one's original name and assigning a new one, something. It sounds more exotic or appealing to Greek ears when they forbid you from speaking your native tongue or observing your family's traditions. They clothe you in their garments, feed you their cuisine, and compel you to worship their deities. Gradually and deliberately, they erase everything that once defined your identity. The guests who come to the house represent the elite of Athenian society: wealthy traders, government officials, famous philosophers, and celebrated artists, men whose names are recorded in history as significant contributors to human progress. Yet here, within the secluded dining room of Lander, they discard their public images and reveal desires that would astonish their admirers. Take Dionysius, a respected politician renowned for his speeches on justice and civic morality. In public, he advocates for citizens' rights and eloquently discusses the ethical foundations of society. In private, he takes pleasure in humiliating young slaves, making them perform degrading acts while reciting lines from Homer. Then there is Cleomenes, a prosperous merchant who sponsors public projects and is lauded for his generosity to the poor. His reputation for charity conceals a penchant for brutality that leaves slaves wounded and shattered. He considers his harshness a form of education, insisting that suffering imparts important lessons about the natural hierarchy of society. Most disturbing of all is Sophist, a philosopher who writes extensively about ethics and the nature of a good life. His public teachings. The text highlights the significance of virtue, self-discipline, and reverence for the divine order. Yet when wine frees a man's speech and clouds his heart, he transforms into a creature who defends every act of cruelty with complex philosophical justifications. Such individuals do not perceive their actions as contradictory, because in their perception, slaves belong to a separate moral realm from free citizens. The qualities that govern relationships among equals do not apply to property. A man might show kindness to his neighbors or peers and exhibit harshness toward his slaves without any feeling of inconsistency. This moral blindness permeates Greek society as a whole. The very culture that created stunning art, revolutionary philosophy, and innovative political systems also accepted the total dehumanization of whole social groups. This contradiction is deliberate and built into the system. The free citizens' leisure that enabled intellectual and artistic pursuits depended entirely on the labor of slaves. Over time, individuals develop survival tactics unimaginable to their younger selves. They learn to interpret delicate cues, revealing a visitor's temperament and desires. They discover which actions are likely to bring favor and which provoke reprimand. They perfect the skill of psychological withdrawal, seeming obedient while retreating so deeply inside that their inner self cannot be reached. Yet survival demands a heavy toll. Every concession to evil gradually erodes an essential part of your inner self. Each moment you give in reinforces the cruel message that you are powerless, insignificant, and disposable. The boy who once laughed while running through olive groves turns into a hollow-eyed young man, drifting through life like a ghost trapped within his own body. Other slaves become your soul family, united by their shared suffering and the instinct to protect one another. You create a quiet system of glances and gestures to warn and comfort each other without drawing the overseer's attention. You share whatever scraps of food you can, take shifts keeping watch during the few hours of rest granted, and hold one another when nightmares become unbearable. Yet even these connections are corrupted by the oppressive structure you live under. The pursuit of the master's approval may cause friends to become rivals. The hope for better treatment can tempt someone to betray a planned escape, or to report a fellow slave's minor fault. The very relationships that sustain your sanity also serve as instruments of your subjugation. On some nights, lying on your straw bed in the darkness, you try to recall your mother's face, but with every month it fades further, replaced by the faces of your tormentors. You attempt to remember your father's voice, but it is overwhelmed by the laughter of the masters and the cries of other slaves. Your past slowly slips away, as distant as a barely recalled dream, while your current nightmare stretches endlessly into an unimaginable future. The physical torment is relentless and diverse. Some guests favor subtle psychological control, domination that leaves no outward scars, but carves deep wounds within the soul. Others are more straightforward, employing fists, lashes, and heated metal to mark their possession on the bodies of slaves. There are also those who delight in complex tortures that merge physical agony with sexual degradation in ways beyond description. Yet it is the casualness of the cruelty that proves most shattering. A guest might interrupt a philosophical conversation to strike a slave simply out of boredom. Another might break away from reciting poetry to demand progressively humiliating performances as part of the evening's entertainment. The violence is neither passionate nor personal. It is as routine as pouring wine or lighting lamps. Slaves learn to regard their own bodies as alien objects, things that house their minds but do not truly belong to them. You develop the ability to watch yourself during the worst moments with a kind of detached curiosity, as if floating above your own pain. This is a survival tactic, but it exacts a cost. A growing disconnection from your own humanity, reflecting the way your masters perceive you. As your second year in the house begins, you notice shifts in yourself that extend beyond the obvious. Physical wounds have changed your voice, making it sound duller and more guarded, stripped away from the regional accent that once identified you as a child of the highlands. Your posture has altered as well, now carrying the stooped shoulders and lowered gaze of someone who has learned that being noticed brings more pain. Even more unsettling are the shifts in your mindset. You find yourself instinctively analyzing the desires and feelings of those who live freely, even though they hold no authority over you. Sudden noises or movements make you flinch, and you feel thankful for minor mercies. A little extra food, a guard who is indifferent rather than cruel. This mental conditioning may be the system's greatest achievement. It produces captives who obey not just out of fear, but who internalize their helplessness so deeply that rebellion seems impossible. The rulers do not have to constantly oversee or threaten because those under control have become their own enforcers. Yet amidst this atmosphere of deliberate dehumanization, small forms of defiance endure. Prisoners find subtle means to preserve their sense of self and humanity. They exchange tales of their homelands, nurturing memories that their oppressors try to erase. They fashion art from whatever scraps they can find. Tiny sculptures concealed within walls, melodies hummed softly to avoid detection, poems created in languages their captors cannot decipher. Above all, they bear silent witness through whispered conversations. During fleeting moments of solitude, they exchange their stories and confirm each other's pain. They recall the names of those who have perished, making sure these erased victims are not completely forgotten by history. They record atrocities and safeguard proof of crimes that their society refuses to admit. This act of testimony itself becomes a form of defiance by affirming their own humanity and the truth of their suffering. The enslaved challenge the dominant narrative that depicts them as satisfied possessions or willing participants in their own exploitation. They keep alive the hope that one day their accounts will be heard and their reality acknowledged. Yet this defiance demands immense bravery and carries mortal dangers. Slaves caught speaking their native tongues risk having their tongues removed. Those found sharing food or showing kindness to other slaves could be separated from loved ones or sold to harsher owners. The very efforts to preserve dignity also attract punishments meant to annihilate it. The house itself acts almost like a character. Its grand marble corridors resonate with the echoes of countless souls lost. Its ornate walls hide rooms where unspeakable horrors take place nightly. The exquisite mosaics and vivid frescoes create a disturbing contrast to the suffering sheltered inside. In this space, art and horror coexist, mirroring the deeper contradictions in a civilization founded on such cruelty. In the third year, witnessing the suffering of others triggers a deep fracture within you, one you never thought possible. This happens during an elaborate gathering meant to honor a military victory over a neighboring city-state. The crowd is larger than usual, their revelry louder, their cruelty more inventive and demanding. You are summoned before a circle of young aristocrats, barely older than you, but already intoxicated by wine and inherited authority. They have created what they call a game, a competition to see who can provoke the most amusing reactions from their human playthings. Each participant takes turns giving commands, increasingly degrading, all while tallying up points as if playing children's knucklebones. As you perform this humiliating act, something deep within your worldview is altered. You cease to view yourself as a person forced to survive horrors, and instead become what they perceive you to be, an object for their entertainment. The fragile connection tying you to the boy who once tended goats in mountain fields is severed completely. This mental death brings a strange sense of relief, since having no hope or dignity left means no more pain in surrendering. You transform into the ideal servant, anticipating desires before they are spoken, accepting any abuse without defiance, living in a state of total submission that demands no thought or feeling. The overseers recognize this change and reward it by providing you with finer garments and more consistent meals. Your cell has a genuine window through which other slaves peer at you with a blend of envy and dread. They recognize what you have become and grasp the cost you paid for these small comforts. Despite this state of emotional dullness, fragments of awareness remain. You observe the household's routines with the detached curiosity of someone watching a performance. You detect recurrent behaviors among the guests, cycles of cruelty and excess following familiar patterns. Gradually, you come to comprehend the economy of suffering that sustains the system. The house thrives on a steady influx of new victims. Young slaves seldom survive beyond a few years before they are either broken beyond repair or grow too old for their master's tastes. Some perish from illness or injury. Others are sold to gladiator schools or mining camps once their attractiveness fades. A few vanish mysteriously one night, their destinies unrecorded and unnoticed. This constant turnover demands frequent trips to the slave markets. Occasionally, you accompany Demetrius on these journeys, serving as proof of what adequate training can achieve. The irony is sharp. The once frightened boy trembling on the auction block now assists in evaluating fresh captives for his master's collection. You observe the fear in the young faces, but feel nothing. When Demetrius requests your judgment on a particular boy's suitability, you respond with clinical appraisals shaped by years of harsh experience. This one will. Resistance beyond a certain point necessitates destruction when something is already too broken to justify the effort. The third example reveals. The newly enslaved gaze at you with desperate hope, seeing in your survival a faint chance for endurance. They fail to grasp that merely surviving and truly living are worlds apart. They cannot perceive that the person before them has been dead inside for years, leaving only an empty shell programmed to obey. During one visit to the market, you meet a boy who strongly resembles your younger self. Identical dark hair, frightened eyes, and a desperate quest for kindness in a suddenly hostile world. He is perhaps 13, small for his age, but with the lean strength typical of someone raised on hard labor and simple meals. Something stirs within the lifelessness inside you as you observe him briefly, and suddenly you recall what it means to be human. The feeling is so surprising and painful that you stagger, prompting Demetrius to seize your arm and ask if you are unwell. You falsely attribute it to the heat, yet the reality is far more complex. Seeing that boy has awakened a part of you believed had died forever. Not hope exactly, but a realization that the person you once were deserves to be mourned, that the life stolen from you mattered even if no one else ever saw it. The boy is bought by another household, sparing you the agony of witnessing his fate, but his image lingers in your mind for weeks, invading your dreams in a way you have not experienced for a long time. With many years behind you, you find yourself recalling your mother's meals, your father's laughter, and the sensation of the breeze touching your face as you sprinted across alpine fields. These recollections are perilous because they disrupt the protective numbness that helps you keep going. Yet they also signal that fragments of your true self, hidden deep beneath your perfected obedience, still linger. The dilemma becomes whether those pieces deserve to be saved or if total surrender would be a kindness. The answer unfolds during another gathering, this time calmer than usual. The attendees are elderly gentlemen, philosophers, and politicians, deeply engaged in serious conversations about justice and the perfect society. You pour the wine and quietly observe their arguments with the practiced invisibility of someone seen as mere property. They debate the works of a renowned thinker, discussing whether virtue is something one can learn or an inherent trait. One participant insists that certain individuals are naturally meant to be slaves, born with imperfect souls that prevent self-rule. Another argues that character is shaped by surroundings, suggesting even slaves might achieve virtue under different conditions. The contradiction is staggering. These very men who abuse children and torment the defenseless engage in serious deliberations on virtue, while you, their victim, stand silently holding their beverage. They speak of justice while committing the worst injustices, and they theorize about the ideal government while building a living nightmare. The earth is ruled by those in power, but when you listen to their discussions, you realize something crucial. Their sophistication is philosophical. This intellect does not excuse their cruelty, it intensifies it. They possess the mental ability to grasp the immorality of their deeds, yet they choose darkness regardless. They are not uninformed savages acting on impulse. They are educated fiends who have justified their horrors. This understanding brings a curious clarity. You now see that this system is not born from ignorance or archaic thoughts, but from intentional decisions made by people who understand better but opt for worse. The beautiful art, the deep philosophical debates, the political advancements, all these are not signs of moral advancement. They are merely diverse human expressions that live alongside boundless cruelty. Years go by in this clear-eyed hopelessness. You master the skill of invisible service, moving through the household like a spirit that occasionally takes solid form when necessary. You observe younger slaves arriving and breaking, noting the endless cycles of brutality and exploitation that remain unchanged. You witness the never-ending parade of respected individuals who discard their public facades behind closed doors. On some nights, you stand by your small window and gaze at the same stars you once saw from your family's rooftop. You wonder whether your parents are still alive, if they remember you, if the world beyond has changed at all. Have you ever reflected on the son they traded to survive? You picture your brothers and sisters having grown up, maybe with children of their own. They share tales about the sibling who left when they were young, but now these memories no longer bring sorrow. They resemble distant melodies, lovely yet disconnected from your present life. You have learned to enjoy them without yearning for what they symbolize. This becomes a kind of meditation, the skill to keep memories without clinging to them. The end comes quietly, without any fanfare or alert. You might be around 25 now, although your exact age has lost its importance in this place, where time is counted by suffering instead of changing seasons. Your body reveals the accumulated toll of years filled with harm, wounds that never fully healed, joints aching from past damage, a nagging cough hinting at trouble deep in your lungs. More importantly, your usefulness is fading. Those who once competed fiercely to claim your abilities barely acknowledge you now. New captives arrive, exhibiting fresh vitality and untarnished hope, making your accustomed obedience appear ordinary instead of extraordinary. You are transforming into what every captive ultimately becomes, unseen, but in a different sense, neglected rather than desired. One morning, Demetrius summons you to his quarters and informs you that you are being transferred to a mining facility in the mountains. This is described neither as a punishment nor a reward, but purely as a financial choice, your worth as household amusement having diminished. The expenses for upkeep are minimal, yet you still face many years of grueling toil ahead. Mining camps are the place where slaves slowly perish. Everyone knows this fact, including yourself. The labor is exhausting, the conditions deadly, and life expectancy is counted in months rather than years. It is not exactly an execution, but survival is far from guaranteed. You receive this information with the same emotional numbness that has defined your life for so long. Whether it is death in spirit or death under the same roof, what difference does it truly make? You have felt lifeless in every sensible way for years, so the end of bodily functions almost feels unnecessary. As you get ready for transport, an unforeseen event occurs. Marcus, the boy who arrived at the camp around the same time as you, approaches on your final night in the familiar cell. Against all odds, he has managed to endure and even find a way to prosper, securing a role as the personal attendant to Lysander's wife. His tasks are less demanding, the mistreatment happens less often, and his meals are more consistent. He slips something into your hand, a small piece of metal sharpened into a point. Though crude, it is functional, a tool capable of opening locks, or perhaps even veins. He offers no explanation, but his message is unmistakable. You have the power to decide the conclusion of your story. Holding the metal shard that night, you weigh your options. You might attempt to flee, though the likelihood of success seems almost non-existent, and the consequences for failing would be severe. The pain was so intense, you could have turned it into a weapon against your captors, gaining a fleeting moment of vengeance before your unavoidable demise. Alternatively, you might have directed it upon yourself, selecting the time and method of your departure from this existence. Each choice held its own allure. Escaping sparked the illusion of liberty, even though the truth might be a swift recapture followed by cruel punishment. Violence offered a grim satisfaction, allowing you to return a measure of the suffering you had faced. Taking your own life provided a sense of control, granting you the power to choose dignity instead of humiliation during your final moments. Yet, as dawn nears, you decide otherwise. You conceal the weapon where fellow captives might discover it, passing on the gift of choice that Marcus once gave you. Your tale may be concluding, but others continue to unfold, and perhaps one will reach a different end. The journey to the mines leads you through landscapes that awaken long-lost memories. Mountain trails evoke childhood explorations. Streams where you once caught fish with bare hands reappear in your mind, and villages resemble your own, inhabited by families who might include your kin still alive. You do not attempt to flee. The chains you bear make escape impossible, and the guards are skilled at preventing such plans. Instead, you use this passage to bid farewell to the world you are leaving behind. Watching eagles glide in the sky, you recall dreaming of flight. The scent of wildflowers brings back memories of your mother. In the garden, you hear the wind rustling through the pine trees alongside faint echoes of your father's voice. The mining camp turns out to be everything you feared and even worse. Hundreds of slaves labor under conditions so harsh that household service seems like a luxury in comparison. The tunnels are cramped and unstable, liable to collapse without notice. The air is thick with dust that burns your lungs and clouds your vision. The work quotas are impossible, designed to squeeze out the greatest amount of effort before certain death. Yet even in this darkest place, you find something extraordinary. The slaves have built their own community, forming methods of resistance and mutual care. Whenever possible, they share food and take shifts, supporting those too weak to continue working. They have created complex networks of communication spanning the entire operation. Most importantly, they remember. During whispered talks and rare moments of rest, they recount stories from their lives before captivity. They mention the names of loved ones, describe customs and traditions from dozens of different cultures, and keep alive languages their captors have tried to eradicate. They bear witness to one another's humanity in ways their masters never could. Your own tale becomes entwined in this oral history. The boy from the mountain village who survived years in an Athenian household, the child sold to settle family debts who endured unspeakable cruelty while holding on to pieces of identity, and the young man who chose to pass on hope even in its absence. The end does not arrive with violence or grand spectacle, but through a simple weariness. Your damaged lungs finally give in to the relentless attack of stone dust. Your weakened body fails after one too many tunnel collapses. You pass away quietly in the darkness, surrounded by fellow laborers who vow to remember your name and carry your story onward. Yet this is not truly the conclusion, because stories like yours have no real endings. They resonate through the ages, whispered where power prefers not to see, reminding us that behind every great civilization's achievements lie countless unnamed victims whose pain made those accomplishments possible. The classical world we admire for its art, philosophy, and political innovations was constructed on a foundation of suffering so vast and systematic it is almost unimaginable. The very culture that gave birth to democracy, theater, and logical reasoning also accepted the complete dehumanization of whole groups of people. These were not contradictions, but rather complementary parts of a single system. If we are honest, we must admit that similar systems persist today. They are more concealed, dressed up in legal intricacies and economic distance, but the core dynamic remains. Powerful individuals still take advantage of the powerless. Societies continue to build their comforts on the suffering of others. Vulnerable individuals keep vanishing into systems designed to consume them while the cycle carries on. We live in a reality where children are exploited through trafficking, yet society engages in abstract debates about consent and autonomy. Pharmaceutical companies manufacture addiction crises, even as they fund studies on mental health problems. Technologies meant to unite and inform instead become instruments for exploiting and manipulating the young and defenseless. This same ethical blindness that permitted ancient Greek scholars to subject slaves to torment while discussing virtue now allows modern people to consume goods produced by child labor while championing human dignity. The mental separation that enabled revered thinkers to justify cruelty also permits today's leaders to disregard systemic abuse while delivering eloquent speeches about fairness and advancement. We convince ourselves that humanity has moved beyond such cruelty, but often cruelty evolves by becoming more subtle. Structures grow increasingly intricate, rationalizations gain complexity, and those harmed drift further away from the beneficiaries of their suffering. Perhaps the most unsettling resemblance is how these contemporary systems conceal themselves behind the same types of intellectual complexity that defined ancient Greece. Elaborate legal mechanisms mask simple ethical dilemmas. Economic theories serve as scholarly justification for exploitation. Technological progress becomes a rationale for neglecting fundamental human kindness. We create stunning art while turning a blind eye to harsh realities. We compose heartfelt poetry even as children vanish into abusive systems. We invent remarkable technologies, but algorithms aimed at increasing engagement push vulnerable youth toward self-harm. We engage in profound philosophical debates on ethics, while the most elementary moral principles are breached daily on our behalf. The boy whose tale we followed throughout these pages perished unnoticed in a mountain mine. His name erased and suffering omitted from official records, his voice suppressed by those who deemed it inconvenient. Nonetheless, his experience resonates across time through the stories of all who have been dehumanized for someone else's gain. Tonight, somewhere on this planet, another child is being sold to repay a family's debts. Another young individual is being broken by systems crafted to exploit. Taking advantage of their weakness, another individual is uncovering the truth that the society they believed was founded on honorable values actually stands on a base of concealed cruelty. Their stories are ongoing, their voices still pleading for someone to pay attention, to bear witness, to remember their names, and respect their humanity. The issue is not about whether such occurrences take place. They happen all the time, everywhere, hidden openly by our shared willingness to ignore them. The real question is whether we will persist in the age-old habit of moral blindness that lets us enjoy the fruits of systemic cruelty while convincing ourselves of our moral high ground. Will we continue to feed ourselves comforting deceptions about human advancement while true human beings suffer unseen in the shadows of our enlightenment? Or will we at last admit that the cost of our civilization has always been borne by those who had no say in the bargain? The child in the mountain mine died for the same reasons children perish today, because societies have consistently found ways to justify the unimaginable when it benefits them. The marble corridors still reverberate with his screams. The exquisite mosaics still hide the stains of innocent blood. Somewhere in our modern glowing cities, within our refined organizations, the identical age-old horrors appear blurred under new guises and speak in current tongues, while the core evil remains unchanged. The situation stays the same. We are them, and they are us. The sole distinction lies in time, and time itself has never stopped human cruelty. It has only served as a reason to overlook it.